Hello, everyone. Welcome to the East Bay Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Steven Avalos. And just to let you know that this podcast is, like somewhat of a branch to the Caramel podcast. Only this one is mainly exclusive for sports only. The reason why we're doing it like this is because I've always wanted to have a priority for sports, and I never really felt like I could have gotten that with the Caramel podcast since there's always so much that we have to talk about that doesn't revolve around sports. And, with my life, I really want to get a job that involves sports talk or something like that, communications that involves sports. And I thought this podcast could be a good start for me. I plan on being a major in broadcasting communication. So I really want to get some experience in with all of this. And we're going to give this a shot. So I'm just going to get straight to it. I just got done watching the Raiders and Broncos game, and based on how this game went, my initial reactions are that I am very impressed with what this team was able to do tonight. With the whole fiasco that lasted many months, ever since they first signed Antonio Brown, he's been a complete workload, diva all the time. Many issues with threatening to retire over helmet issues. He wanted a certain helmet, league didn't allow that. He's like, I'll retire then. Caused a lot of issues with the team. Then there's him threatening our general manager, Mike Mayock. Then also, apparently seeking consultants to try to get released from the team, arguing over fines that were completely reasonable for missing practice. Just many things went wrong with his time in Oakland. Very, very short-lived time. And, to establish my opinion on it, I was really excited to see that his talent come to Oakland, and I did know that there's going to be a lot of baggage to go with that as well. And I'm very disappointed with Antonio Brown, his actions and all that. He really missed out on playing with a great team, or a great team for the future. And that's all on him. He had the opportunity, completely blew it. I'm really disappointed. But when I did get the news that he was released, I definitely have to admit that I was relieved. And I think you can say that the Oakland Raiders were relieved as well, knowing that they didn't have someone to always, be yes men to. They didn't have to always, cater to this guy. Now they can do their own thing on their own. They don't have to worry about him in the locker room and all that. It's not always about him. Now they don't even have to think about him anymore. Although I wish he didn't sign with the Patriots because they don't even need him to win a Super Bowl. And when they have him next week, it's going to be scary. So that's enough of that for Antonio Brown. I've had enough of the whole situation. I just really want to move forward with the Raiders season and see how it goes. I still believe that this team can have a pretty decent season without him. And so with tonight's game against Denver, Raiders won 24-16. I was really impressed on both sides of the ball, special teams as well. And mainly with the offense, Derek Carr and Josh Jacobs. That looks like they could be a great tandem in the coming years. Carr looked just as good as I always knew that he can be. He's always been a player that has a lot of potential, but, that he just doesn't show it all the time. He has it in him to throw deep downfield, to move around the pocket, improvise on plays. And, in the last few years, ever since he broke his leg, he wasn't really showing that. There was some glimpses every now and then in 2018. And, I was really hoping to see more of that this year. And that's what it looks like we might be getting. Because Carr was throwing deep downfield, converted many third downs. Only missed 4 passes. He was 21 for 25 overall in the game for 259 yards, threw a touchdown in the first drive. Just something about him looks so much different. He looks really confident. Just loved a lot of what I saw from him, and a great leadership as well. You really saw him really honed in on this game. And I also really got to appreciate our new running back, Josh Jacobs. Drafted him in the first round out of Alabama. There was already a lot of expectations for him, especially from a school like Alabama, a very prestigious school for football. And some people have even said that he might be a candidate for Rookie of the Year. And so far I'm in on that. Today, Josh Jacobs ran for 85 yards on 23 carries and scored 2 touchdowns. The average on every carry isn't too high, but 2 touchdowns still contributes a lot. And plus, he also had a 28-yard catch and run. So overall, that's 100 scrimmage yards. Sorry about that. And a little interesting fact is that Josh Jacobs is the first player since 2001 to have a 100-yard game from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns. Since 2001, and the last player to do that year was LaDainian Tomlinson. For those of you who don't know who LaDainian Tomlinson is, he recently became a Hall of Famer. He spent much of his career with the Chargers. Definitely was a pain in the Raiders side when he played, but he was a great player nonetheless. And back to Josh Jacobs and all, I really liked what I saw from him. Great energy, great shifting. He was. He had some tackles for losses every now and then. You don't want that, but every now and then you could see he's trying to make his own plays. If one pathway was blocked, he was able to find another, and he had a great drive too. On both of his touchdown scores, his touchdown runs, he was met well before the line, but just found a way to either leap through people or just keep pushing through to score. And that's what you want in a running back. You don't want them to just completely fall over when they get hit. That's why people love Marshawn so much in his prime. Is even like later in his prime, Marshawn would get hit early but just found a way to get through, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of in Jacobs. He just knows how to get through even after contact, and that's something you want to see in a running back, especially in their very first game. Some other players that impressed me on offense was Tyrell Williams. Because we lost our main wide receiver due to very obvious reasons. Tyrell Williams is going to be the man to step in to be Carr's number 1 receiver. And I already had a lot of faith in Williams because knowing how he was with San Diego, he was mainly the number 2 guy behind Keenan Allen. Not San Diego. Everyone forgets that. Chargers are in LA now. I still see them as San Diego. My bad. His time in LA, he was always behind Keenan Allen, who is a very impressive receiver, so it's understandable for him to be behind Keenan Allen. But in 2016, Keenan Allen tore his ACL in week 1, so then Tyrell Williams had to take over as the number 1 receiver for the rest of that year. And knowing that, I believe he had a 1,000-yard season, really great year for someone that had to be shoved into the number 1 spot in week 1. So I knew that he's been through this before and that he can easily do it again, especially with a quarterback like Derek Carr who has so much potential. Darren Waller, the tight end, was also very impressive, especially in the first half. He had a really impressive first half. A couple great catches for great yardage as well. Some first down plays. That was pretty much it for him in the first half. It was very quiet in the second half. I didn't really hear much about him. And some other things I wanted to go into was also Hunter Renfrow. I had a lot of expectations for him this year. Of course, he's like a small down wide receiver. He doesn't really, he's not is supposed to get much playing time, but he still had 2 catches for 13 yards. So it's not a whole lot, but better than nothing. And I still want to see a lot from Hunter Renfrow because I knew he's been very clutch in his college career. Felt like he's been playing in college forever. Dwayne Harris didn't really do much on the offensive side exactly, more on special teams. Had a 72-yard kickoff return that helped the Raiders get the final points of the game to make it 24, to make it hard for the Denver Broncos to come back. I'm not sure if there's anything else I could really share for the offense. Really, just want to leave it off with that. I'm very proud of what they've been able to do, especially with all the drama that happened in the last few days, the way they managed themselves. It looks like they didn't even need Antonio Brown in the first place. So I'm very happy about that. Okay, just kidding, actually. I totally forgot to mention the offensive line. My bad. So the offensive line was a little shaky at the start with penalties, multiple holding calls, false starts that looked like they could have caused a lot of damage to themselves, especially with in the second quarter, near the end of it, where the Raiders were already pinned back to under the 10-yard line of their own territory. Which there were multiple false starts, got them down to their own 5, but as the game showed, they eventually scored a touchdown on that drive, 95-yard drive, which I guess you could say is great on everyone, especially the O-line, for being able to persevere through that obstacle. They kind of dug a hole for themselves and they were able to climb out of it. Rodney Hudson, the main guy for the O-line, center, completely underrated player. He deserves so much more respect than he already gets. Another great game as usual. Whole O-line, especially Colin Miller at left tackle. I believe he plays left tackle. Really impressive game for him. He was really shaky in his first year with Oakland, being a first-round pick. He was injured all year, still kept playing through. So you had to admire that. But he's still even playing. He still had his struggles every now and then. But with tonight's game, I could say I was really impressed. There was lots of plays where, Gruden, as usual, likes to get really creative and all that. Probably had some ridiculous names for his play calls as usual. But, at various plays where I could see Miller just totally understanding what he's supposed to do and executing it very well. So, hats off to the O-line and really the whole offense. That's pretty much what I have to say for the offense. Great job today. Now to get into the defensive side of the ball. With the first few drives, the Raiders looked really impressive. I really liked what I saw from Jonathan Abram. He's got to tone it down with the hits, of course. I think you can tell him that 1,000 times. I still don't think he will. He plays safety, and he likes to hit people hard. And of course, in the old days with football, he would be great for the Raiders, and he still has a great future with the Raiders. I think he's a very high IQ player. Just has to tone down with his hits, especially in today's league. The league has become very sensitive to hard hits. Sometimes they don't even know what a hard hit is at this point, and that's where Abrams has to be careful because he likes to go in, lower his head sometimes, or just come really hard to people on the sideline to where it's like you don't know if there's going to be a penalty or not. And it's kind of like you sometimes have to understand it, that's something you want Abrams to understand. That, to be a good player, he also has to recognize how you should tackle someone and how you shouldn't. Doesn't matter if you're trying to hit them hard. It's about just making the smarter play. And essentially, I'm really hoping for the best for Gary and Conley. He was first drafted in 2017, practically injured all year, but has some flashes. Then he has almost full season in 2018, in a really bad year for the Raiders. He was one of the bright spots, really great coverage, easily the best corner, and looked like to be the best quarter of the team this year. But before he got injured tonight, it looks like he didn't really have it, especially against Carlos Sutton, one of the wide receivers for the Broncos. Every now and then it looks like Sutton was getting first down catches on Conley. Conley just had a hard time getting the inside spot on him, which of course, Sutton's a good receiver. He found ways to get inside on Conley. It's hard to play like that against a receiver, but Conley, there's high expectations for him. He should be able to get in on that coverage, but he didn't. He had his struggles, and then in the third quarter, as Denver was driving through the field, things got really bad when Abrams, as I've noted earlier, he likes to tackle people really hard, made a sideline hit, and he kept going, and his leg hit Conley on the top of the head. You can see his head go down almost like a button, and he was down for a while. There was a long break afterwards because people had to attend to Conley. Eventually, he was carted off the field. He gave some thumbs up, and from what Gruden is saying, he should be okay, or at least hopefully he is. And I hope for the best for Conley. That kid has a lot of potential. Sure he struggled in the first half, but that doesn't change anything with an injury. I hope the injury isn't too bad. I'm wishing you the best. After Conley was taken out, Mullen had to come in for him, and when you're put in a situation as Mullen was put in, it's hard to immediately assimilate into the game because you're on the bench most of the time. Next, you have to cover Emmanuel Sanders, who's Denver's best receiver. I did mention Sutton is a good receiver, but Sanders is definitely the best receiver on the Broncos. I had to cover him all of a sudden. It's a very tough task, and it easily showed. As for one of Denver's lone touchdown drive, that was pretty much all an attack on Mullen. It looked like every play they just threw the ball wherever Mullen was, whoever he was covering, they just threw the ball to that guy. And Mullen had some really close plays. Like his coverage wasn't completely terrible. It's just he kept barely missing. Like every now and then, like he could try to deflect the ball, just barely missed it, and it would end up going for big yardage. So I do feel bad, but when you got to be ready for any situation. Pretty much most of what I have to say for the secondary. Like I said, Abram, great tackling. Same for Kyle Joseph. He has some good coverage as well. Had some mistakes every now and then with coverage, where they didn't back up their corners, especially on a play where Mullen gets blown by from either Sanders or Sutton. Safety wasn't there for him, so it cost big yardage. Other than that, that was pretty much like the only blemish on the safeties spot of the game. And getting into the front seven, the linebackers and the linemen, I was very impressed from what I saw. New picks like Cleveland Farrell, our number one pick at the fourth spot. I really liked what I saw from him today. Got his first sack, especially on a big part of the game when I believe I think Denver was either Denver was in their own territory close to it, which helped give the Raiders the ball to help try to close the game out, or it was when the Broncos were on our side of the ball, like on our territory, like in the red zone. Actually, coming to think about it, it was when Denver was deep in their own territory. Still, forget all that I just said. Really nice to see him get his first sack. He was a very controversial. Some other things I also really liked about the D-line was also Vontaze Burfict at linebacker. I really loved the energy that he passed down onto the rest of the defensive squad. You could tell on every stop they got, they were just so energetic. There was so much fire in them. You got to know that Vontaze Burfict, he brought that down to them. And he's a very controversial player. He's a total hard hitter. Goes a little crazy sometimes, but then again, that's what the Raiders are. As long as he brings leadership to the table as well, I'm totally fine with that. And that's what he looks like he's been doing so far. So congrats to you, man. I want to see you keep going with that. I also want to give a shout out to Ben Mayowa. I really hope I got your name right. Got 2 sacks today. First time a Raider has gotten 2 sacks in one game since Mack in 2017, and we all miss him. So it's nice to get some resemblance of those old days back. Really nice game for Mayowa. Again, even the whole D line, PJ Hall, Maurice Hurst, they all looked really good. They did a great job stopping the run today. Struggled with it in the beginning of the second half. Didn't like they had the run job as well, but after a while, like in the fourth quarter, they really burped. They really figured out a way to shut them down. And with the whole defense today, the secondary could be a little questionable every now and then, but other than that, I was really impressed with what I saw. Just comparing it to last year, the energy that this team has is so different. Like last year was just like there's so many games that we didn't even look like we had a chance. Like we were either completely blowing a game in the fourth quarter, like we were the worst fourth quarter team in the NFL last year, or we just got completely blown out. That's all it pretty much was. And we didn't have either of that today. It was just a mostly dominant game by the Raiders. So, just hats off to them today. Hats off to Gruden. Coached a good game. And I just really want to say again with Carr, I really like where he's going. I'm really happy for you. Now going into the Oakland A's sides of things, if you didn't watch today's game against the Astros, lucky for you then. Because today the A's got killed 15-0. Game was over in the first inning. Fiers allowed 6 runs in the very first inning of the game. And of course, he struggled before against Houston, and it really showed again today. Just, Houston, they have a really great lineup. They know how to kill any pitcher, really. And it just showed. It looked like, home runs were the only things I hit. There was only one RBI that was earned without a home run. They tied the franchise record of home runs in a game with 7. And in the previous game before that, before they played us, they scored 21 runs, I believe. 21. So that means they've scored 36 runs in the last 2 games. That's unheard of. And it really makes me not look forward to the rest of the series against Houston. But luckily, after Houston, A's don't play any more good teams, technically good teams for the rest of the year, because the rest of the teams are below 500. So if the A's can at least split the series, then they have a good shot for the playoffs. And because Cleveland also won today, now the A's only have a half-game lead for the second spot in the AL wild card. That might slip out of the A's hands by the end of the series, but after the series, there's still a whole lot of baseball left, so it's not something to feel too bad about. And some other good news, it came out yesterday, was that the A's are bringing up Jesus Luzardo. For those of you who don't know who that is, he's been the A's number 1 prospect. We drafted him last year or the year before. No, actually, no, we did not draft him. I believe he was acquired from trade. Had a really great year in the minors last year. Lefty pitcher, extremely dominant, great control, and he's a great strikeout pitcher. And he's been pretty good this year as well. So I'm just really happy to see him coming up with the team. They say the earliest he'll pitch is Wednesday. So, hopefully he's going to be coming out of the bullpen in that game for sure. Hopefully he comes in a good situation and he's not thrown into anything too bad. Of course, when you're a bullpen pitcher or just a player in any sport, you have to be ready for anything. So we just got to hope that he's ready for the task. And of course, a part of why he's coming up is because it's September. That's when major league rosters can have 40 people. Usually it's 25, but then they can go to 40. And a concern I have is why the A's didn't bring up Matt Harvey. He's a veteran. He struggled this year when he was with the Angels. Then the A's picked him up off waivers, and they've just been leaving him in the minors ever since. And from what I've been looking at in his games in the minors, he's been pitching well. He can pitch. He's still a starting caliber player somewhat, and he can give you a lot of innings. So I don't understand why the A's don't try to experiment with putting him in middle relief, have him pitch in 2 or 3 innings in relief, especially since the A's bullpen hasn't been what it was last year. So it's best to add more arms to it. So I still find it very puzzling that Harvey hasn't been added. If you're wondering what that sound was, my dad just came in the room and threw food at me in a bag. It wasn't like trying to be mean or anything. He just thought I was hungry. Thanks, Dad. Anyways, yeah. I want to see Matt Harvey come up. He's a good inning eater in a bullpen situation, or at least I believe he can be, especially in a year where the bullpen really has been unreliable and inconsistent. I still have a lot of faith in the A's to make the playoffs this year. Cleveland, they're a team that practically doesn't even deserve to go to the playoffs. And they're behind us, barely behind us. They've been thriving off of horrible teams, and eventually that's just going to have to catch up to them. Before I end this podcast, I just want to give a quick shout out to, he's totally not going to get this because he's a professional sports player. I don't know why or how he would get to listening to me. That would be cool though. That is Will Lutz. He's a kicker for the New Orleans Saints. He's been playing since 2016. I remember because he made his first ever game against the Raiders in the season premiere. And he gave me a heart attack almost because he almost made a game-winning 61-yard field goal. And I remember I was like, oh man, like he almost did that. If he can almost do that, especially like in his very first game, what can he do when he gets more established and more comfortable with the league? And he's proven me right so far. Ever since then, he's been a reliable kicker for the Saints. And for those that didn't watch the other game for Monday Night Football, Saints and Texans, it had a crazy last final minute. It was like 50 seconds to go. Texans get the ball, score a touchdown in 13 seconds. I don't even know how they did it. They just, 2 really long plays, score a touchdown. How can the Saints even win? They needed a field goal, but still, with 37 seconds left, it's like almost unimaginable. Then they drive down the field. Houston Texans play really soft coverage, which gives them the field goal range that they need, that the Saints need, which, still is really puzzling to me. Like, whoever their defensive coordinator is needs to be investigated. I don't mean seriously investigated, though. I'm not that serious about it. It's just he made a really stupid decision. But anyways, then it led to Lutz kicking a 50-plus yard field goal. I think it was 57 yards, and he made it look like nothing. If it was like the 61-yarder that he was involved with in his first ever game, he would have made that look like nothing as well. They kicked it straight through. Saints win. My jaw was dropped because I remember seeing him before, and plus just the circumstances of the game alone was just insane. And, I just want to give hats off to that guy as well. Lutz seems like he's going to be a great kicker in the future, or he'll be remembered very well because he's already got an extension with the Saints. Got married as well. Of course, that doesn't have to do with him playing, but, that's nice. It's nice that he's got his life together. So, just shout out to you, man. I hope things keep going well for you. And that's pretty much it for my very first podcast with talking about sports. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hopefully this releases very soon, very, very soon. I also plan on making another episode later this week. So, give like more of an introduction about the sports side of myself. That way, just to inform you all about why I got into all of this and why I want to do it. All right. Take care.